Good morning to everybody. Thank you for being here this morning. For those of you that are keeping track, this will be day 20 days since the Democrats recklessly shut down the United States government. And the Democrats are making some very costly history here. Don't lose that in all that's happening. This is now the third longest shutdown in history. And when you look at it carefully, it is now already the longest full shutdown of all time. You had an example in 2018 and you had one back in 1995 that were longer, but they were partial shutdowns because they only affected a part of the federal government. This is everything. And it's also important for us to note, this is the first time in history that any party has had the audacity to shut down the government over a totally clean, nonpartisan continuing resolution. This is a political stunt. And it's the first time it's been done, and it is the most costly, most selfish, most dangerous political stunt in the history of the United States Congress. Because as we have stood here day after day after day explaining all the Americans who are being harmed by this nonsense. And the Senate Democrats have zero shame about this. They don't have any shame at all about the pain that they're inflicting upon hardworking families, upon soldiers and law enforcement officers and veterans and the elderly and the disabled and women, infants, and children. Services to all those categories and paychecks to those folks are being stalled because Democrats are playing games. Today, Leader Thune in the Senate will once again bring the clean, nonpartisan CR to the floor for a vote. They will have another chance. Democrats will have their 12th opportunity to pass the bill. It is the same bill that they themselves supported just 7 months ago, and Chuck Schumer gave impassioned speeches on the floor about how it was the only option. And don't forget, they did it 13 times under the Biden administration. Very similar measures, but not now. Something's changed. Over the weekend, we saw what it was all about. The Democrats made crystal clear that this is about politics. The politics were on full display. The politics, the spectacle, is what the mobs, the crowds, the rallies this week were all about. It was quite ironic, though. The irony was very glaring. They called it the No Kings Rally. But the great irony, of course, that we pointed out over and over was if President Trump was a king, the government would be open. If President Trump was a king, he would have closed the national parks and the National Mall, so they couldn't have had the rally out here. By the way, that's what President Obama did during the shutdown in 2013, closed all the parks and the National Mall. Here in Washington, you had Senators Bernie Sanders and Chris Murphy and Cory Booker and others marching in the streets. Now, these are the same senators who voted over and over to shut down the legislative branch and hand the reins to President Trump. They're decrying the situation that they themselves created. This has always been about the spectacle. Chuck Schumer himself joined the spectacle in New York City. And it's interesting to note his activities there. He was standing side by side some of the most radical groups that maybe ever assembled on U.S. soil. They openly advertised as co-sponsors of the event in New York City the Communist Party USA, the Democrat Socialist of America, the Freedom Socialist Party, the Young Communist League of New York, many others. Do we need any further evidence? They're not hiding this. They're out in the open. They're not shy about it, because this is the core constituency of the modern Democratic Party. These are objective facts. Look at what's happening. Open your eyes. It is exactly why Chuck Schumer is pandering in this whole charade. We've explained from the very beginning, this shutdown is about one thing and one thing alone: Chuck Schumer's political survival. Now, I noted on Friday, the lead organizer of the rallies this weekend issued an open threat to Democrats. Quote, "The cavalry is coming in on October 18th, and they're either going to be celebrating with you, or they're going to be calling for new leadership." Now, that's a direct threat to Chuck Schumer, and he heard the message. And so did Hakeem Jeffries in the House. And that's why neither of them were here doing their jobs. Instead, they were out in New York and California. They were catering to the same radical base that is just days away from electing an open Marxist as mayor of New York City. And now that Chuck Schumer has had his spectacle, he's had his big protest against America, this is our plea. We're asking, and I think everybody in this room and everybody watching, listening to our voices this morning should be hoping that he is finally now ready to go to work and end this shutdown and stop inflicting pain on the American people. Republicans have been working. We are ready. We've been doing this. It's been over a month now. We passed our responsible short-term solution to keep the government open while we just simply finish our work to fund the government openly and transparently, and Republicans are completely united on that front. On the other side, Democrats can't even agree amongst themselves. You got different subgroups among them. You've got a few reasonable Democrats who know shutdowns hurt the people, and they've already voted for our bill. They want to keep the government open. Then you've got others desperate to prop up the failures of Obamacare with no reforms whatsoever to make the program more affordable. That's what we're fighting for. And you've got AOC calling for her own negotiations on live TV, and you've got Chuck Schumer and Hakeem Jeffries still unable to articulate what it is they need to reopen the government. It illustrates the point once again. This was never about a solution. It was about creating an issue. Now that Democrats have had their protest and publicity stunts, I just pray that they come to their senses and end this shutdown and reopen the government this week. Republicans are waiting, the American people are waiting, and we are ready to act. As evidence of just how united Republicans are in this fight, I've asked two of our prominent leaders in the House Republican Conference. I've got House Freedom Caucus Chairman Andy Harris. Dr. Harris is also an appropriator, and House Freedom Caucus Policy Chair Chip Roy of Texas. I'll turn it over to Dr. Harris first.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Earlier this month, the House Freedom Caucus made history by hosting our first press call held with the Speaker. And today we're doing it again, standing shoulder to shoulder at a full leadership press conference as part of the united Republican front against this Democrat-led shutdown. On the Sunday morning shows yesterday, the Democrats tried once again, unconvincingly, to say that they are not to be blamed for the shutdown. But the reason that the government remains shut down is becoming crystal clear to Americans. It's because Senate Democrats have chosen to pander to their radical base instead of doing their job for the American people. Senate Democrats have had the opportunity to vote 11 times for the House-passed bill that pays our troops, pays our law enforcement, and pays our air traffic controllers now, and would immediately reopen the government. Instead, they've sided with the same radical activists who filled the streets this weekend chanting "No Kings" at rallies backed by the Communist Party USA and socialists, the same people who claim to hate power while demanding more control over your life. The question before us now is simple. Will at least 5 Senate Democrats relent and break from their party's left-wing fringe and vote to reopen the government today? Let's also be honest about what the Democrats are really fighting for. They're demanding taxpayer-funded health care for illegal immigrants. They want to eliminate work requirements for welfare for able-bodied adults who could work but choose not to. And they're defending hundreds of billions of dollars in continued corporate welfare for big, profitable health insurance companies that have already made a fortune off Obamacare with the Biden bonuses that the Democrats scheduled to expire at the end of this year. House Republicans have already done their job. The only thing standing between America and a reopened government is a handful of Senate Democrats too afraid of their activist base to do the right thing. But it's time for those 5 Senate Democrats to show some courage, stand against their leadership, but with hard-working Americans, and vote to reopen the government. I want to close by thanking Speaker Johnson for his leadership in standing firm against the radical left's unreasonable demands and for standing with the American people. Thank you, and I'll turn this over to Congressman Chip Roy.
Thanks, Andy, and I want to thank the Speaker and the leadership team and the President for their leadership during these last several weeks. I'd say it's good to see you, but I mean, honestly, I'd rather be in Texas. But I'm happy to be here today with these guys. No one disputes one obvious fact. It is Democrats who have chosen not to fund government. Can we at least establish that truth, right? It is, in fact, the truth. And the question is why? And you saw it on Saturday. It was basically for a political rally for cover for Chuck Schumer, who's in his own political battle in New York. That's the truth. And the irony of this is this No Kings rally. What are we actually talking about? I mean, it wasn't President Trump, but Democrats who tried to make us take a shot or lose our job. It wasn't President Trump, but Democrats who were burning our cities to the ground in 2020 and attacking police officers. It wasn't President Trump, but it was Democrats who want to push boys into girls' locker rooms, who want to force surgeries upon children. It wasn't President Trump, but Democrats who pushed fraudulent mail-in ballots in 2020 and left the elections in question. And then when Americans dared to question that stuff, they sought to jail the American people. They weaponized the government against the American people. And now they want to turn around and say they're going to have a No Kings rally? This is the dying breath of a bankrupt party, in my humble opinion. All too happy to shut down the government and then have a Chicago teacher walk around with this symbol against her neck. Somebody tell me how that's appropriate. Where are the Democrats that are crying out about how horrific that was? And by the way, where are the Democrats who are calling out the Attorney General in Virginia for calling on the death of children of a political opponent? Where is Abigail Spanberger, one of our former colleagues running for governor of Virginia? Do they not have the courage to call out fellow Democrats for that absurdity? The truth is, we have a president. We don't have a king. We have a president who loves our country, who rightly said yesterday that he's working his ass off to make this country great. He is correct. Brokering peace deals in the Middle East, rebuilding our military, rooting out DEI and critical race theory, declaring cartels as terrorist organizations, focusing on Antifa, defunding the World Health Organization, getting us out of UNRWA, making sure that we target the Southern Poverty Law Center, who are, going after people like our friends at the Family Research Council or ultimately Charlie Kirk, securing the border, passing the Lake and Riley Act. These are the things the American people want us to do, not shutting down the government for political rallies. And the truth is, the Marxists, the radicals, and the Islamists, the Democratic Party promoted this weekend. They cannot handle the truth. The truth is that there is a king, and that king is Jesus. And the president has been willing to say it. His administration has been willing to say it. And Charlie Kirk was willing to say it, and he got killed for it. Democrats are using this ridiculous political exercise to hold hostage the government of the American people, pretending it's about health care. Meanwhile, it is Democrats who've been holding the American people hostage to an unconscionably broken health care system that they themselves created. We're saying no more. We're the party that's standing up for hardworking Americans who can't afford health care, who can't afford insurance. We're not for giving more money to the insurance companies. We're not for a $400 billion blank check to big corporate America and corporate welfare, like my friend from Maryland said. We're not for health care for illegal aliens, but for standing up for American citizens to be able to afford health care, to carry forward the president's good policies, like short-term limited duration plans and other ways that people can actually go and afford health care. We're for law and order. We're not for hate-filled lawlessness. We're for common sense, not radical surgeries on our children without parental consent to say a boy can be a girl. We're for a message of hope, hope born in the freedom of those who fought to give it to us through their blood and also through the blood of our Savior, Jesus Christ. Republicans are working to make America great again. Democrats have been trying to run out the clock. And for Hakeem and Chuck, their time is up. Let's turn it over to Steve.
Thank you, Chip. Well, you could see Republicans are united strongly in working to open the government back up. We all voted to prevent a government shutdown, and that bill went through the House weeks ago on almost exclusively a party line vote. And since then, for weeks and weeks, that bill has been in the Senate, where Democrats, led by Chuck Schumer, consistently have voted to shut the government down. And we've said all this is about is Chuck Schumer trying to appease his most radical base, the most far-left elements of the Democrat Party, the people who have taken over the Democrat Party. Frankly, they've held Chuck Schumer hostage, and so now Chuck Schumer is holding the American people hostage. And this weekend, we got to see on display what that Hate America rally we've been talking about was really all about. And you could see some of the signs. These are just a few. But over and over again, you could see signs like 8647. I think everybody knows what that's about. Multiple signs like that advocating for the death of our president. And where are the Chuck Schumers of the world calling that out? They didn't call it out. They actually went and celebrated with those people that are advocating for the murder of President Trump and other Republicans. It's insanity. Yet that's where the Democrat Party in Washington has gone. Most Democrats around the country don't buy into that far-left radical socialist base that Chuck Schumer's catering to. And that's why so many are walking away from that party. But in the meantime, that's who is controlling the Democrat Party here in the United States Senate. and in Congress. And that's why we continue to be at this stalemate, not because there's some ability for us to come together and find a common ground. We've been trying. We had a provision in the working families tax cut that would have lowered premiums for families, healthcare premiums, by 11%. It was scored by the Congressional Budget Office to do that. 11% reduction in premiums for families. And you might ask, well, why is that not law of the land? Because it passed the House. Well, when it got over to the Senate, it was Senate Democrats who went to the parliamentarian and fought to get that provision removed because they don't care about lowering premiums for families. They really don't, and they showed it over and over again. What do they care about? They care about catering to the most radical elements of their base. You could see the sponsors, and it's been mentioned before, the Communist Party of America, the Socialist Party. Well, that's who's taken over the Democrat Party. That's not who America is. America is not a socialist nation. It's surely not a communist nation. But the Democrat Party here in Washington is trying to pull the country down that rat hole. We've seen it over and over again. That experiment's been tried time and time again, and you could go look at the scrap heap of history to see other countries where it's failed. Why won't they go protest over in those countries and just be a part of those countries where it's already failed? But they come here and they lie about our president. They call him a king, where ironically, they're also advocating for the death of that democratically elected president. And so you've got to see it all on full display. And hopefully that's what Chuck Schumer needed to go through to show them that he's still keeping the government shut down to appease that group. But now that rally is over. And the pain that he has inflicted on American families continues. It's time for Chuck Schumer to end the pain he's inflicting on millions of American families. And finally, vote. Just 5 Senate Democrats need to come together to vote to open this government back up again. We still have big differences, and we'll be negotiating our differences in the weeks ahead. But it's time he releases the American people from this crazy experiment. With that, bring up our whip. Tom Emmer.
As the Speaker said, we're now on day 20 of the Democrats' shutdown. For everyone tuning in, here's a quick review of everything that's happened in the last 3 weeks. Republicans did our jobs. We passed a clean, nonpartisan government funding bill that Democrats supported just 6 months ago and passed 13 times under the Biden administration. 11 times now, Democrats have refused to pass our clean CR, shutting the government down in the process and forcing Americans to pay the price. In order to simply turn the lights back on, Chuck Schumer and Hakeem Jeffries have demanded $1.5 trillion in new spending for things like taxpayer-funded health care for illegals and cutting $50 billion from our rural health care fund. They've taken the American people hostage while pointing fingers at us for refusing to concede to their absurd wish list of demands. But Republicans have been clear. We will not negotiate under hostage conditions, nor will we pay a ransom. The Democrats' position is totally unreasonable. It's hypocritical. And it's pure partisan politics in a desperate attempt to score points with the radical, pro-terrorist wing of their party. Now that their Hate America rally is over, I hope that at least 5 Senate Democrats will finally do the right and responsible thing by breaking ranks with Chuck Schumer, passing our clean CR, and reopening the government. If they continue to refuse, we're going to continue to hold them to account. And I hope members of the media in this room are going to do the same. With that, I turn it back to our Speaker, Mike Johnson.
Okay, a few questions. Chad, go ahead. Chad.
Thank you. We understand concerns about air traffic control. We understand that they're going to lay off workers at the they're going to lay off workers at the Nuclear Security Administration.
Mm-hmm.
What keeps you up at night about what parts of this federal government are not operating?
Well, those are 2 good examples. The question is, when the when the administration is required to triage federal spending, they have to look and evaluate what are the most essential and what are the less essential functions of the federal government. And they look at policy, personnel, and all these offices. But the things that concern me the most are TSA, for example. I mean, you're right. We are shorthanded already with air traffic controllers, with TSA agents, keeping the airports safe and our flights safe. We cannot afford this nonsense. And I think the Democrats in their heart of hearts know that. When you're talking about nuclear deterrence, our former colleague Brandon Williams was a congressman from New York, and now he's now been confirmed, and he's one of the people in charge of nuclear deterrence for the United States. He's a former officer on a nuclear submarine. He brings a lot of experience to that job, and he came to sit down with me a few days ago, end of last week, and he said, I just want to articulate for you how serious this is in terms of national defense. And we didn't get into the classified parts there. We weren't in the SCIF, but suffice it to say that every day that the government is shut down, it is a danger to the American people. We're in a nuclear arms race with adversaries right now. It can't be any more serious than this. China, Russia, Iran, North Korea, you've seen what they're up to. America is the last great superpower on the planet, but we have to maintain that status. And if we get behind on funding or personnel or any of these projects that we're involved in that are at a level that we can't talk about in here, it's very serious. So you have every function of the federal government that is being adversely affected. Of course, it's troops. We got the troops paid, thankfully, the middle of this month, because the president did heroic work. They found money within DOD that they could use on a temporary basis. But that money is going to be exhausted. You can't have the troops unpaid. You can't have Border Patrol agents unpaid. They've got to defend the country. And this is not a game. And that's why you see us so frustrated up here every day. Again, I'm going to reiterate what we said earlier. This is the first time in history that we've been in this situation. There has never been a party that shut down the entire government or a party that shut down, over a clean CR for nothing but political partisan purposes. Their rally illustrated exactly what we've been saying for the last 20 days. This is about politics, and it's disgusting. Yes, sir.
Speaker Johnson, you say that the Democrats had a Hate America rally, but what does it say that the President of the United States over the weekend released a video of him pooping on the American people?
The president uses social media to make a point. You can argue he's probably the most effective person who's ever used social media for that. He is using satire to make a point. He is not calling for the murder of his political opponents, and that's what they's people are doing. I mean, they're in one of these photos. I think there's a picture of the president hanging in effigy by a noose on one of these. The one on the far end. I mean, it's unconscionable. Look, America is built on the idea of free speech. You have the right to protest. Of course, we jealously guard that. I mean, Chip and I are attorneys. We've defended that right in the courts. But what they're doing right now is different. They are trying to incite violence. It's not funny. You don't mock a president who has already had 2 failed assassination attempts on his life. This is not a game. And the idea that communists would be supporting this is unconscionable to us. Look, when we give tours of the House chamber and we bring in constituents and we point out all the historical facts and images around the building, I always start with "In God We Trust," which of course is right above the rostrum of the Speaker's podium. And if you look in the visitor's guide to the House chamber, it says on page 14, when was that put there? Well, it's put there in the early 60s, 1961, as I recall. And it says in the guide that it was put there, Congress voted to put that there as a rebuke to the Cold War era Soviets. Why? Because their philosophy, that's what it says, a rebuke to their philosophy. Their philosophy was Marxism. Marxism begins with the premise that there is no God. It is antithetical to who we are as Americans. The Declaration of Independence says we're created by God and He's the one that gave us our rights. It is in God whom we trust. That is the national motto. That's what America's built on. What those people are advocating for is at its essence un-American. And when they go the next step and they call for violence on political officials in an environment that is already a heightened threat environment, it's dangerous stuff. They had the right to do it. Congratulations, they didn't burn any buildings down. That's a big achievement for the left, to have some kind of gathering where they don't have a looting and riots and burn a building down. There was, I think, some in Portland, they threw bottles and bricks and stuff at the ICE facility because that's what they do for fun now out there. But they had a free speech event. Congratulations. But you need to look past that and look at what it is they're advocating for openly, and it's really scary stuff. Yes, ma'am. Second row. Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Speaker,
I was actually pointing to her. I don't think you've asked a question before. Go ahead.
hi, Oriana with Notice. So Arizona Attorney General Chris Mays said over the weekend that she plans to file a lawsuit against you for not swearing in any territorio. Have you or your office spoken to her in the last couple of days about that, and what's your response to that?
Oh, my goodness. Okay, yes. So yet another Democrat politician from Arizona is trying to get national publicity. So now it's the state AG who's going to sue me because Grijalva is not yet sworn in. Let me go through this again for you, and I have some updates. First of all, I'm following the Pelosi precedent. I was on some of the Sunday shows and was asked about this because this is all they have to talk about right now. When Julia Letlow was elected under very similar circumstances to fill the seat of her deceased husband, who passed away tragically by COVID, Nancy Pelosi, Speaker Pelosi at the time, took 25 days to administer the oath of office to her. It wasn't just Julia. The Pelosi precedent extends even further because when Pat Ryan and Joe Sempolinski were elected, during an August recess, they waited 21 days to administer the oath to those to rep-elects because they were not in session. We are not in legislative session. The chronology is important. Rep. Grijalva won her race in, I think it was the last week of September, after we had already gone out of session. So I will administer the oath to her, I hope on the first day we come back, legislative session. I'm willing and anxious to do that. In the meantime, instead of doing TikTok videos, she should be serving her constituents. She could be taking their calls. She can be directing them, trying to help them through the crisis that the Democrats have created by shutting down the government. Oh, and by the way, I also did find out this little tidbit that should be interesting to you. When a rep-elect comes in on a special election in particular, it is up to the leaders of her party, his or her party in the House, to give them guidance and direction. One of the first things they do is reach out to what we do, is reach out, majority leader, or reaches out to the rep-elect and says, hey, welcome, congratulations. Here's all the things you need to do. Here's the office of the chief administrative officer of the House, and they will help you get all of your computers set up and your passwords and all the rest. That call was apparently never made by Rep. Grijalva, and I don't know if the Democrat leader's office didn't inform her of that. But I found out this morning that the person who runs that office in the chief administrative office is on furlough because they voted to shut the government down. And so that person didn't reach out affirmatively, but now it's been sorted out, and I'm told they're going to her office today because she made a TikTok video saying that she couldn't use her computers. Well, she'll be able to use her computers now. Okay, she has 16 staffers. They need to be taking calls, and they need to be helping their constituents, just as Republicans are out in their districts right now, helping them navigate the chaos that is created by Democrats who are playing political games. Yes, next question. Yes, sir.
Are we not fast approaching the point where this CR doesn't buy you time for appropriations?
Well, I would defer to my appropriator buddy up here, but here's the thing. The appropriators have been doing great work. They're continuing to work. Even during the shutdown, they're working individually and on their subcommittees and among themselves and even across the aisle to get the next batch of appropriation bills ready for passage. Is the time eroding quickly? Yes. Is it dangerous for them to shut the government down right now? Yes, because we have very pressing matters that we need to handle, but we can't do it when the Senate is stalling all of that, stopping it. We passed 12 separate appropriations bills through the House committee. They've done their work. 3 of them off the House floor. 3 bills off the Senate floor. They don't match up exactly, so we're going to a conference committee on that. We have to finish that process. We have to rebuild the muscle memory for regular order because that is how we serve as good stewards of the American taxpayers. We're anxious to do that. We hope the Democrats will see the light. We hope that you will ask them the tough questions this week. Why in the heck are you doing this? What is the point? What is the purpose? And don't let them say it's about Obamacare subsidies because that was always going to be the subject of debate internally and across the aisle between the caucuses and amongst everybody in the month of October. And they are now eating up the clock for us to have the thoughtful debate about reforms and things that might be necessary if indeed that's going to be extended. So it's on them. You need to ask them the tough questions. We're here to do the work. We'll continue to do it. Thank you all.